I have your attention. Will everybody stand, please? Ready. Say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, stay standing for a minute. We're going to treat you to a very interesting song.
This is Lieutenant Colonel William E. Clark, Commanding Officer of the United States Army Field Band. We're happy to greet the members of the Americal Division on the 40th anniversary of the landing on Guadalcanal. We bring this salute to a close with the playing of the Americal Division March by Lieutenant Colonel Retired Chester E. Whiting.
All right, seats. That was something I'm sure. Yes, ma'am.
Before you start,
Yes.
just a minute. Get there. Get there.
Lynn, you know how I have to take care of you, my little buddy? And there's some things I have to talk about here at this meeting before you start, because you get motivated. Okay? Yes, sir. And I know that I can't do this myself, so I'm gonna ask for some help. Larry Boatwright, would you come up here, please? Yeah, you, Larry, and Jeannie Gibbs, come here.
Oh. Right.
Now, these two gentlemen have had long and meritorious service, not only in this unit, but on this earth. And today is the birthday of these two boys.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Lord Larry. Happy birthday to you.
Last year, at the dinner, I was able to present you. Larry, stick around. I was able to present you with something I don't think everybody realized the magnitude of the gift.
Yes.
And you didn't bring it back, and I feel very hurt about that.
Yeah.
But, fortunately, I've got a replacement. This one too has been personally inscribed. I'd like to have you read that.
Lieutenant Baker, congrats on your 8th reunion with the boys from Company D, 1st to the 6th. Fondly? Oh, Jane. let me insert something. Bill last year on the way out the door gave me his Jane Fonda book that he told me he took to bed every night, but he was going to give it up to me. And I immediately sent it to my son that's a shooter, right? But he's just like me, a procrastinator. You know, he moved the book from one side of his desk or table to the other side, back and forth, back and forth. So about a month ago, I said, Ryan, we're running out of time. You know, you got to get me that book back. And he said, well, Dad, we're in the midst of a fire thing in Tucson, so we can't go to the shooting range. I said, Ryan, take it down some deserted road, throw it in a ditch, and put holes in it. And so, anyway, he sent me the pictures of it, put it in the mail, but he sent it real snail, media mail, and it's probably in Kansas or Hawaii or someplace right now.
Well, we have seen the photo.
So I'm on a diet, and I do my exercises 40 minutes every night, and I will take her with me downstairs.
Larry, I don't want to leave you out, so I'm going to give you a choice. You can have either this wonderful book from General Schwarzkopf, or if you don't want this, I do have Yogi Berra's book.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Oh, very much. Bill has always been thinking of me.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Without little snafus, right? And we have a slideshow that you can't see because my PowerPoint slide was made on my desktop, and then the PowerPoint that's on here won't read the field, so I'm going to fake it. I just love faking it, and so I'm going to ad-lib this whole thing. And anytime you got a question, put your hand up, and I'll ignore you. So anyway, the goodie bag, I go back to the first reunion, and I remember we gave out a goodie bag, and there was something kind of cool in it. I can't remember what it was. Paul, do you remember what that was? A dog tag?
Dog tag, yeah.
Okay, and so people are starting to wear the dog tags around, and Paul said, where's my dog tag? And I said, well, where's your bag? And he said, well, I just threw it over there. And of course, nobody knows where it went. And so, Paul, you never got your dog tag, right? Yes, sir. Well, you probably don't remember. Maybe that was that first reunion.
You're right, I probably don't remember that one.
Yeah, that was a different Paul Hamilton. We had two so far in our unit. But in here is some kind of cool stuff. Some of you have been too busy to catch it, but an organization approached us, and it is called, I'll get it right now. It is called Veterans Helping Veterans Worldwide Organization, and they made out a certificate to every individual in this room, and it's in your package. We've got also information about the CIB Association. I don't know if everybody was aware of that. I think I heard something, but anyway, Sergeant Major got a hold of me and said, can I some way to get to your people? And so that's in your package. We also put a CD in there, which is going to tie into our meeting without a slideshow this evening. With Les Hines, our illustrious Marical Division historian. Jack, I'm sure you'll want to talk to this gentleman. He has a whole archives over here that he brought with us and has been sharing individually with our people, and maps and just awesome stuff. In the back, he's got laminated every map that exists on Vietnam and our AO and what have you. But what we tried to do is put on here some of the cool stuff from the archives and from 1st to the 6th. Later on tonight, Wayne Johnson, who developed 1st to the 6th website, will share dinner with us, and I'm going to coerce him and Les and myself to kind of hit some high spots and hopefully answer questions from the field about history of 1st to the 6th and Delta Company and the AmeriCal division. Last not least is this monster, and I'm a big penny pincher, and when it come to print this thing, I had an option of every page or every other page, or no, on both sides. Well, it was some ridiculous amount of money if I put it on 2 sides. Last year, I think we did that, and they were having a sale, and but I just want to. I know some of you take this home, and it goes into some place of honor. It's round, about 12 inches high, and but I put a table of contents on it this time because I've had people say, Silver Star? Did we have anybody get a Silver Star? And I said, you know, in a book every year, you know. and so just to run you down here, due to Randy Bordner and his ability to run out and convince people to do everything, is a copy of the governor's reclamation, which we have the original in the back of the room. And that's a first for Delta Company to be recognized by the state. The Missouri House of Representatives resolution. And jokingly, I told Randy, I said, did you explain to him that we're having our reunion in Kansas? And that never thought, because we originally was going to be in Missouri. And our sales rep, 2, that we had here was going to get it from Kansas. She said the governor owed her big time from a poker game, and so she was going to collect on that IOU. Then in here is the itinerary, the schedule, that boring stuff, the agenda for the meeting today, which I'm going to have to use. The attendees, for you, if you want to remember who was here. At least it shows you who started out. We started off losing people kind of like flies, and we lost the Howertons, and we lost Sunleys and Burnett, and
Ash.
I've lost.
Ash.
Oh, Ash. Dennis had. Well, Dennis was scheduled because Burnett's were scheduled too because she had a reunion tonight in someplace in Missouri. Anyway, moving along, the corporation documents, for you can see what we went through to get the Delta Company incorporated, which ends up, I think, it costs us like $800. We keep saving money every reunion. This year, I think we, by itself, if they take away the taxes for the food, we aren't charged for taxes on the food this year. I think that'll save us $800 right there. Also, a plug for D Company's website, like Dennis or Larry said as Dennis was leaving last night, if you haven't seen our website, you're missing it all, folks. Because to me, we've got everything. We honor the KIA, the 40 lost brothers. We have that interactive map. I saw some of you really getting excited. Les was passing around copies of the Division Talk logs. Well, that's what we use to make the interactive website. So every one of the 760 incidents that Delta Company was involved in from February 68 to November 71 is in that map. And you click on that and it'll take you to the backyard of some guy's house where you thought this big incident happened. So moving on real quickly, the current contact information. So if you want to email somebody, the best email address is there. If you want to mail, a snail mail somebody, it's there. The next item is to me, one of the most important things is biographical sketches, because you can take that and look at what Larry Stovall did before Vietnam, what he did during Vietnam is a real quickie, but I think everybody in here has sent me one, so we have at least you guys and maybe 20 or 30 of our other brothers. Also in here, there's been some articles that have come forward and we've gotten copies, and we call it what they wrote and what they remember. And then we recognize the individuals that were killed in action. We recognize the Silver Star recipients. If we've got citations on them, we have a citation on there that tells you what they did to get the Silver Star or the citation. The Guidon. This is Delic's company's Guidon from Vietnam. I would guess, anybody can help me with when Erdman was in Vietnam? 70?
He got there in 1st of July '70.
Okay. 2 July 70, he was sitting in the orderly room and the first sergeant has a pole, which Erd didn't even know what it is. And Erd is my command sergeant major now. But he didn't know what this pole thing was, and the sergeant's taking off this piece of cloth and throwing it in the wastebear basket and putting a new one on and mix it. Hey, Top, can I have that? And Top said, yeah, it's going in the trash. So he folded it up and sat on a shelf for 40 plus years. And at one point he said, gee, could you guys want something to do with this? And I said, yeah. So here it is. Every year we fly our colors along with the American flag. The Vietnam War stats. I know you hear things, you hear how many people were there, how many people died, all those type of nitty-gritties is toward the end. And then we show the annual group pictures. So we try and do every year a significant picture of everybody. But as we're seeing this year, it's hard to get a picture with everybody in it because they keep leaving. So anyway, we will move on here. And since I don't have my slideshow to help me along, I'm gonna, as I told Larry, I'm gonna fake it. My goal in this meeting is first to meet the mandatory requirement we have as an incorporated nonprofit organization, but to also sit down with y'all and a chance for me to obviously rattle on and call your attention to certain things. And there's certain people I'd like to have stand up right now. Lynn Baker, Larry Boatwright, Dennis Bush, Jerry DeSanko, Chuck Krantz, Gary Salapini, Larry Stovall, and Butch Sunley in absence. Thank you for standing up. Oh. We do this every year, so Gail's going to tell me what this is.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Board of Directors.
No. That's wrong.
Silver Star.
That's wrong. Okay, I'll take the embarrassment with you. I'm sorry. I thought you were gonna whip me out right away. These people have been here at 2011, 12, 13,
everyone.
14, 15, 16, 17, and this is 18. So they've been here for eight. I promise I won't embarrass you anymore. Will Randy Bordner stand? All right, Randy, in case you haven't been aware from our last meeting, who was very instrumental in recommending that we come to Kansas City because you'd only have to drive 30 miles, but also because it was the center of the state. And like Branson, by being in the center of the state, it's easier. How many people
Center
drove?
of the country.
How many drove? Look at this.
Wow.
I cannot do this if I say Washington, D.C. I can't do this if I say Reno, Nevada. Notice I said Reno, Nevada. I can't say that when I say Reno because you got to fly. So this made it very important for us. Randy, since he's 30 miles down the road, was what we call our ground coordinator. And as you saw yesterday when we had a second cab of the 137th, he coordinated that. He coordinated the proclamations that we have. Him and his wife did the wonderful birthday thing over here. So we saw lots of cool things, and that's what our ground coordinator does. Those things on the ground that you can't or I can't do. Yeah, you can sit down now, Randy. Thank you. So, anyway, and then our special guest, who's not here, is Ed Malone. Was that it? Sunley's guest. And normally I announce who our guests are, but they had to all leave. Next is our senior military members. One of them had to leave, he had to drop out because his wife was in the hospital, Guy Howerton, and our senior officer in attendance, Larry Stovall. Could you stand for a second, up and down? Okay, that's enough. He is my true brother. Yeah, he's my OCS guy. We both went to OCS, so we've got war stories to tell each other. I nominated Larry for the Hall of Fame. Read his bio. He was in charge of the POWs in Gulf War I. I thank God they didn't do that to me. Jeez, I would have opened up the gate and said, go home now. So anyway, Larry, you got a few words you want to say?
I do. I've been waiting all week for this opportunity.
Boy, did I open it up.
I'm gonna come up here. I'm gonna come up here where I'm sure everyone can hear me. So, in 2013, when I had only known this man for our first reunion was 2011. Well, in 2013, he nominated me for the Officer Candidate School Hall of Fame. I had never heard of that. I did not know that there was an Officer Candidate School Alumni Association. All this has been going on for years. I knew nothing about it. So when he nominated me, I thought, I better join that association because they sponsor the Hall of Fame. So I did. It's a really unique and special organization. It's almost as dear to me as this organization. It's not quite at that level, but it's awfully close. So I've been back to the reunions down there. We've been back every year but one, and we had reservations that year, but we weren't able to go. So I just want to tell you just a little bit briefly about it. And I brought this criteria because I knew I couldn't, and I'm not going to be long, I was kidding about that. I just want to read the criteria, and the reason I want to read the criteria is because I nominated Lieutenant Colonel retired Lynn Baker for the Hall of Fame, and he was inducted this year at Fort Benning. And I want to read the criteria for that induction, and then I won't take but a minute. Now I want to tell you a little bit about his classmates in his Hall of Fame class. So the stated criteria for nomination, there are 5 criteria. Number 1, awarded the Medal of Honor or the Distinguished Service Cross. Number 2, elected or appointed to an office of prominence in national government. And people like former Vice President Bob Dole, a World War II veteran, is a member, people like that. Achieved national or state recognition for outstanding service to the nation, attained an exceptional wartime service record, or number 5, attained the rank of colonel while serving on active duty or in the reserves. That's why I take such pride in Lieutenant Colonel retired Lynn Baker being accepted into the Hall of Fame. and there are exceptions to that policy, and that was one of them. They're not stated, but they're made by the board that reviews the applicants. So Lynn's class included 2 Medal of Honor recipients, 2 Major Generals, a Nobel Prize laureate, Ralph Peters, who anyone who's ever watched Fox News knows as the senior military analyst, and I think the guy's written 30-something books. Very smart man. I didn't write that down. There was one more I was going to mention.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, you get the flavor of that. I just wanted all of you to know that our fearless leader is now in the Officer Candidate School Hall of Fame.
Let you know, part of that reason is because of you and the reunions that we have done and the OCS reunions that I've done, put together to keep groups of people together and not, I can't believe how many brothers I meet on the street and I mention what we do and they say, God, wouldn't that be nice if I could see some of my brothers again? And so that was part of why I was accepted in the Hall of Fame. Thank you very much, Larry. Recognize our senior NCOs. We have Sergeant First Class Doug Barnett, who is not with us today. He had to leave early. And Jerry, would you stand? Sergeant First Class Jerry Wingman. When we do the round robin, he'll explain a little more, but Jerry was our medic, assigned to headquarters company, attached to Delta Company for his tour in Vietnam, and he spent 21 years active duty and retired. Obviously spent a lot of time at one of my favorite cities, Fort Sam Houston. So anyway, Jerry will elaborate on that when we do the round robin. And speaking of it, page 2, this is the time that we do the round robin for new people, for people that forget from one year to the next year. That's great. We have each individual stand up and briefly, since Class Cock isn't here, that's good. No, that's not good. I miss him really. But our first reunion, Pearl filmed it, and he stood up, and he stood up, and he stood up. We were going out and getting coffee, and coming back, going to the bathroom, coming back, having coffee, falling asleep, waking up, and he was still talking. And we just love him. But the cool thing is, folks, we got that puppy document, and we've got all of his recalls on film. So anyway, I'll start. Everybody's bored now because this is the 8th time they've heard some of us. But anyway, for the new people, I started in a little town called Waterloo, Iowa. Born and raised there. The minute I graduated from high school, I moved. Total excitement to get away from my parents and go out into the world. And I did a 2-year apprenticeship program in drafting, professional draft dodger. I saw the draft was going to happen, so I immediately ran down and enlisted for a drafting school, got my drafting school, went to AIT for combat engineers. But the whole time in basic and AIT, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but I noticed it. There was always some guy with a beautiful uniform, spit shine boots, standing off the side with a little butter bar here, and he didn't do anything. And I kept saying when I was a big black sergeant, I said, I want to be one of him. And he said, no, you don't want to be one of those lazy blades. And I said, oh yeah, that's exactly it. I want to be one of those guys. He hasn't done anything. You worked your fanny off ever since I walked through the door. So anyway, OCS came about, engineering school, got my orders, being held over after AIT, and they canceled my class. So I got a choice of going to Vietnam as a PFC grunt, not grunt, laborer, or go to OCS. And that's OCS infantry was 6 months. I said, great, war will be over by then. So anyway, off I went. Vietnam platoon leader. I was in the mortars first, then 3rd platoon. Then my appendix went out. I was medevaced out. They ruptured on the way to the hospital. My medic saved my life, and of all you people that I've found, I have not been able to find him. And someday, and part of the reason, Jerry, is because he was assigned to headquarters company, not assigned to Delta company. So anyway, someday I'm going to find that gentleman and let him know how much I appreciate what he did in saving my life. Second half of my tour, I was a headquarters company commander for what they call it 16K, Combat Aviation Group. That's like an Army brigade. You have 3 battalions underneath all the helicopter assets in the Americal Division, and gave me a chance to fly front seat stick on a Cobra, and at the same time, the pilot was firing next to my head, and needless to say, I couldn't wait until we hit the ground. But anyway, from there on, my civilian life, I went back to being a draftsman. I got out of the Army as a captain out of Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Got off to be back to drafting because the mafia wasn't hiring. So I went back to be a draftsman, and I did everything possible to get out of that job, and ended up being a superintendent with the City of Tucson Water Department, there for 29 years, and then kept in the Army 39 years, started in '68, retired the second time in 2008, went to Iraq, 3rd Army headquarters in Kuwait. Spent 14 months there as the senior planner for the surge, which when we went from 15 brigades to 20 brigades, a small group of retirees did all the planning and the reverse planning for that. My hobbies are genealogy, bowling, woodworking, and taking care of Pearl. That's a lot of work. So that's my quick summary. I'm sorry. And so we're going to pass the wand to, you're going to have to come up here because we're filming this for the, help me Les, we're filming this for the Texas,
Texas Tech Vietnam.
yeah, Texas Tech Vietnam Center. Send a copy of this to them. Next will be my platoon sergeant.
Good morning. I'll let you know how this all started. Some 8 years ago, I was on the internet, and something with the Americal Division. Yeah, you're still on it. And there's a message there that says, I'm trying to contact my platoon sergeant, Paul Uncle. Well, you know, first of all, I'm on the internet. Oh my God, I'm on the internet. So I continue to read, and it's Lynn. So I don't know if I called you or...
You went back
Oh
to
yeah,
Facebook.
believe it or not, I answered.
I hear you're hunting for me.
Yeah. Well, we met, we decided to meet, and Gail and I lived in Florida. So we met at a casino, the Hard Rock. It was, yeah, in Tampa. And it was Lynn and Pearl. And it was Tom Nowak, if you all remember Tom, lost his legs, and his wife, and Gail and I. And this is how this all started. And I think it was Lynn that said, wouldn't it be fun to get together? So from those 6 people, we've got this many, and hopefully many more in the future. I don't know if you know how much time and effort it takes to do this. You know, what do? We do 2 things. We call and make plane reservations. We call and make hotel reservations. My part's done. What are Lynn and Pearl doing? They're trying to get good rates on hotels. They're calling bus companies. They're trying to set up the food. It just goes on and on and on. And these two people deserve our appreciation like you don't know. Thank you very much, both of you. I don't want to talk about my life. You all know about that. You know, we're living in a world today that, I'll be honest with you, it's just downright crazy. Women dressing up with vaginas, men now using the ladies' room. You've got correspondents that wouldn't know the truth if it bit them on the ass, excuse me. You can't wear a lapel pin with a flag on it, certain. It's ABC, by the way. I mean, it just doesn't stop. And I'm thinking, is this what we went to war for? I believe in freedom. Believe me, I love this country. And I know most of them. In fact, I know you all do. But this has got to stop. You know, we need some sanity. We really do. I don't know. The only thing I know is I'll do my little part. I already did. I didn't get Hillary elected.
Amen.
Okay. God help me if there's a liberal in the room. Who rose their hand? Oh my God. I may need a bodyguard later, I'm not sure.
Well, maybe that's why you left me on the bus.
Oh, I want to speak about one other thing. Is it the Marines that say no man left behind? Is that who said that, the Marines?
Yeah.
Len. I will say no more. They got back safely anyway. I worked for Sears most of my life. I retired at 55. We came to Nevada. We were here. I worked for a bank. I worked in a pawn shop, and I still do, by the way, and I just absolutely love it. You meet the most unusual people that you will ever meet. I meet famous people, gamblers, prostitutes, drug dealers, and believe it or not, even some people down on their luck. But it's been a great job. Gail, she works, what's that company? What do they do?
Skip trace.
She does skip tracing. She loves her job. I just put up with mine. Okay? I just want to finish by saying thank you. I'm glad to know all of you. God love you. And God bless America while we can still say it.
Amen. My name is Frank Gibbs, and first of all, like Paul said, all I did was make plane reservation and hotel reservations, and that was it. It wasn't a whole lot of fun going through making reservations here. You know, like I talked about a half dozen people and nobody knew what was going on, so finally we were able to make reservations. And for all those people that have had a part in getting this started and making it what it is today, I'm not going to start calling names because I'll forget somebody. Certainly Lynn and Pearl and many, many more. And like I said, all I do is show up. But in showing up, I just want you to know that I have never had a better experience in my life than getting to be around some of the people that I serve with. I'm 72 years old now and I can't remember names like I used to. And if I don't look you in the face and don't know who you are, I'm sorry, but I do remember your face. And I also want to thank Bill Doyle. I don't know if Bill's in here or not. Is Bill here?
Yeah.
He's coming in right now.
Yeah, I certainly want to thank Bill Doyle because if it wasn't for Bill, I wouldn't be here. You know, I didn't make the first 2 or 3 reunions. And Bill and I were best friends in Vietnam. And Bill kept hounding me to go to a reunion. I don't want to go to a reunion. I just want to forget about it. You know, I don't want to go. Bill kept hounding me, and I thank God for Bill, because he finally got me coming to a reunion. I've been to reunions ever since, and it's the highlight of my year. And so Bill, I thank you for getting me involved in the reunion. And like Paul said just a minute ago, the state of this nation really bothers me. You know, I've already seen a whole lot more sunrises than I'm going to see. All of us have. But it scares me to death to know or to think about what kind of world my children, and especially my grandchildren, are going to grow up in. And I echo your Hillary Clinton comment.
Thank you.
Very true. Yeah, very, very true. And so this is a highlight of my year. I certainly love, you know, us fellas, we're more wrinkled, we can't hear as good, and our bones hurt. The ladies are just as pretty as they were last year. But again, you know, we continue to go downhill. And some of us have physical scars, all of us have mental scars. We're going to take those scars to our grave. No doubt about it. But again, this is a highlight, certainly a highlight of my year. One small glitch, you know, Gary and I were really enjoying the World War I Museum with our wives and Mary, and I hope Mary a quick recovery. I know she's had some stomach virus problems, I think, and so we wish her recovery. When we got left at the museum, you know, we were busy looking around and seeing all the museum we could, and came out, the bus was gone. And if anybody will tell you there's a second bus, that's a bunch of bullshit. There ain't no second bus. So we got to know each other real well, you know. I mean, we know about our children, grandchildren, and we sat out on the curb and counted the cars as they went by. Saw all the different tags from the states, you know. And so from now on, when I go to anywhere on the bus, I guess especially with the first to the sixth, you know, I'm gonna carry me a sign.
You make sure the camera sees that?
Yeah, put the camera.
Says, homeless vet, we work for food. Well, I didn't know we were gonna make it back or not. And Gary has one of these too, you know, so he's gonna be taking it with him everywhere we go. I just really love you guys to death, and we've had approximately 50 more years of life than the guys that listed on that sheet of paper back there. And we've had approximately 50 more years of life than the guys named that listed on that wall in Washington, D.C. And I only hope and pray to my God that I have been worthy of those years. Thank you very much.
So,
Can I go off?
you can go off, but you gotta come back.
Okay, well, I guess I was just gonna, I've been in contact with some of the guys that couldn't make it this year. So I thought I'd give you an update on them. We visited Mike Swartz and Anita, his wife, up in Washington. We didn't see Anita because she was in the Philippines. Anita went to the Philippines for a month, and she just got back a week or so ago, so they're recovering or reuniting, and he couldn't come. We visited Jim Glasscock, who Lynn mentioned. Jim has suffered from PTSD, I think, since before he went to Vietnam. But anyway, he's been on some medication that really wasn't helping him, and he was deteriorating. But Linda and the doctors found some new medication he's on now, and he's really not in too bad a shape. He may be able to come next year, and you'll get an orator. I've talked to Phil Payne, who some of you may remember. He was in the field with me and some of my guys, and then he was the armorer, I think, for a while. I've been trying to coerce Phil to come for 2 years, but he's just one of those guys that just can't quite make the decision to come, but I'll keep working on him. And I was going to just mention in passing, Last year, Gary Augustine did a little presentation for us and offered to help some guys if they wanted to get some compensation and that. I don't know whether anybody's taken advantage of that or not. He is in the process of retiring right now. So if anybody has been procrastinating and they still have his email or his phone number, you might want to call him, because he's helped, I don't know, he's helped me, he's helped Russ. I don't know how many guys he's helped, but he really can, they really do have a lot of power, the DAV, so it might be worth your time to contact him here before he retires. The other thing, I didn't want to interrupt Lynn, Dennis Ash just casually mentioned to me before he left last night, there's a part of the website that's the store, and I guess he has the store ready to put up, but he was going to hold off until after the reunion so the guy didn't get mixed up with this and that. But if there are some things you want to buy, Dennis said he'd have that up soon, so if you want some, you could do that. The other thing I wanted to relate, Lynn came up with these coins a couple of years ago. I traded a couple emails with Lynn trying to learn about them. He gave me a lot of information. I looked up on the internet and found some more information. And I wanted to just relate one story. My dad grew up in North Denver. His best buddy was a guy named Elmer Wortley. They played sports, chased women, all of that stuff, their young adult life. My dad went to Colorado A&M to go to college. Elmer went into the Marine Corps. Submarine Corps. His boat went down off of Russia sometime in the mid-40s. He went down, the boat was so deep, or the submarine was so deep they couldn't bring it back up. So anyway, I researched a little bit and I found out there was some memorials different places. There's one down by Glenn and Fran's house. I guess down on the coast by Mobile, there's the Alabamas down there. Also, there's a memorial to the Hennessy, which was the submarine. There's also one in San Diego, where anything Navy is, I guess. There's also one in Hawaii, and my wife and I were in Hawaii, and we visited the Arizona and the Missouri. There's also a submarine deal there, and there's a memorial to the Hennessy, which is the boat that Elmer went down on. I placed one of our coins on that memorial. So I thought Lynn might want to know that. So that's all I got.
I follow these orders from Grover Cash from Faxon, Oklahoma. I got drafted in '69. I was a farm boy and factory worker up in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Ended up in Vietnam in February of '70. Lasted 6.5 months, and I got wounded on August 16th, and lost both my legs and part of my hand. Went to San Antonio to the hospital, and from there on into the VA and other recovery for several years. Got out, did some creative drinking and chasing women and buying cars and spending my pension however quickly I could, because I knew there was another check coming the first of the next month. So had a lot of good times. Messed up and got married to my first wife. I did get 3 good sons out of her, but our deal didn't work for about 7 years. Then I had a second wife, and that lasted 6 weeks. And I decided it wasn't going to work, so I filed for divorce. And I waited right at 10 years and married Bernadita, and that's lasted 28 years.
Oh,
Been great years for her, pretty good for me. We've got one son together, he's 14, and he's really pissed off at mom and dad when we explain to him how good the World War I museum is. We've been studying it about 6 months and watching whatever movies and reading books. And told him about the Renault tank, and he said, "Oh, you mean the M whatever nomenclature number?" You know, I said, "I don't want to tell you talking about just a Renault tank." But what's it been, 5 years ago? I come up with cancer, had a kidney removed. Talked to them, they said it wasn't any, no evidence that it was from Agent Orange. Then I had some sections of ribs removed, and then I got one in my lung, so it's stage 4 lung cancer. Had some miserable experience with some of the chemo, and it had me down. I lost almost 30 pounds on it and was sick as a dog, and they finally took me off of that, and they've got me on some IVs now. Feel a whole lot better. I don't know what good it's doing because they haven't done any tests, but I figure the way my luck's going in life, short of a zombie apocalypse, I'll probably make it through for another 8 or 10 years. If Paul Hamilton's Communist Party doesn't take over. And that's it. This here's just like Frank said, this is a high point coming to this every year, getting to see these guys. She's been on my ass about needing more rest. And I told her, I said, I can rest next week. I said, I get to see these guys once a year. So that's, I really appreciate you all, and I love coming to it every time. Y'all take care.
Yeah, my name is Lee Navarro. I'm from originally from South Texas, down in McAllen. Then I got drafted in '68. Went to Fort Bliss, Fort Lewis, then straight to Vietnam. Lasted maybe about 8-9 months. I got wounded, sent back to the States. I ended up in Fort St. Houston in San Antonio. I was out for maybe 2-3 months, and they sent me to Fort Hood. And that's where I got out of the service and went back to McAllen. So I decided there was nothing there for me, so I'll move up to North Texas. So I've been there since, I guess, '71. Worked at the post office for 31 years. I retired in '02, which I was 55 years old. And I worked for, or was working for the Texas Rangers at the ballpark. And I started there in '01 up through the beginning of this year. And finally, I thought I had enough, so I went over and turned in the keys. I said, bye. I had enough already. I don't need any more. I was married for about 22 years, I guess, and lost my wife in '93. I got one daughter. She's 50 years old, but I don't think I'll ever have any grandkids. She don't have the desire of going out or meeting anybody, so we're just stuck in the house, both of us. So, but yeah, and this. It is also the highlight of my life, coming over here every year. I went to the first one, I probably missed about 3 or so, but this is the best place. I can come every single year and see all you guys, you know, my brothers that I served with, and some that I got to know here, so believe me, this is the place to be.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Lampy. I was born in a little town in Illinois on a dairy and cattle farm. And I guess I was there till probably a year after high school. I went to Chicago for a year to go to school and experience the big city life. And when my year was up there, so was I. So I came back down south. I started building cores for a while. And then Uncle Sam decided they wanted me, so I went in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic, and Fort Ord, California, Vietnam, and that's where I met Lee Navarro, Bob Richardson, a couple other guys that aren't here yet, but hopefully a couple years from now we'll get them in here. But anyway, got back from Vietnam and went back in that car factory, looked down that assembly line, those same guys are doing that same thing. And I thought, I just don't know if I can pull this for 27 more years, so I put my name in at a local Corps of Engineer lake, and about a year later they called me. I started there as a laborer, and I just stayed there through a progression of different jobs. And I retired there in 2011 as a park ranger, so that's about the end of my story. So thank you all for having me. I didn't make the first few. I didn't really know about them until I got in contact with Lee, and he sort of guided me over here. So it's great knowing all you people, and hopefully everybody will see you next year. In between all this stuff, I met my wife Donna. She's been driving me down the hall.
I can see you. I can hear you.
I'm talking for Larry Boatwright, and if I forget something, let me know. He usually does. We're Larry and Carol Boatwright. We're from Illinois, around Carlisle. We both went to school there in Carlisle. And once he finished high school, he went to Carbondale to school. He learned to repair cars, the body of the car. What did they call that?
Body work.
Body work. I thought they had a special name for it. And he did that. He helped my brothers a lot with, because they were always wrecking something. And anyway, from there, he went to Belvedere, worked at Chrysler up there painting cars, and then he got drafted and went to Fort Leonard Wood. Was there and was a DI up until January of 1968. Then he went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and then from there, around the 1st of February, he went to Vietnam and spent from the 1st of February to the end of October in Vietnam. And then come home, we got married. I see, he didn't forget it. I reminded him. We got married, and then I thought, oh my, what did I get into? Because he had a ritual that he always did, and I guess it was from Vietnam, how he made the bed, had the gun, and don't get up. But anyway, we made it through. We're going to, in February of 2019, we're going to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary. Wow. But we've been doing, since he went to worked at Rockwell for 28 years with Rockwell International in Centralia. That was the automotive part. And he retired from there, and then he had a few companies that he had, and then once he had his stroke in 2005, he had to give those up, and him and his partner sold those. It was a mortgage company, a title company, and you had a land development company. And once he had his stroke, he couldn't do that anymore. So anyway, once he had his stroke, I decided that we are going to travel every year. So we've been traveling a lot. And we just got back at about the middle of May from Australia. And he was there 50 years ago today in Australia. And he says it sure changed. But we had a good time. We started in Sydney and went all the way around to what they call Fremantle and Perth. And it's a beautiful country. So except for the 18-hour flight, it's a great It's a great country to go, or continent to go to, because we went all the way around. And did I miss anything?
Nope.
And this, I told our whole life. We're getting ready to go to Mexico for our 50th anniversary. That's actually in 2019. So thank you. I won't talk anymore.
They gotta get their story straight. Larry told me yesterday they was married on 14th, and then she said the 19th, so.
No, well.
That's all.
14th.
See, I got it wrong.
You got it. I'm Glenn Mosley, my wife and I, Francis, we live in South Alabama, right down close to the water. I still live on the hill that I was born and raised on. I built a house right beside my father. In 1979, I built a house by him and been pretty happy ever since. My brother, younger brother now lives in the house. My mother and father was in, and we like it there. A little small town with about 5,000. And we have 2 children. Our oldest daughter lives in Prattville, Alabama, and our son lives in Columbia, South Carolina. He went back to school a couple, 3 years ago. He already had college education, but he didn't like what he was doing, so he decided to go back to school and become a nurse. So he's a nurse now. He loves it. I remember I was living in Wilmington, Delaware with Francis and with a friend of mine named Don. Don lived about a mile from us, and we were best friends. So we just decided one weekend we were going to go see my brother. We never thought about it being a 24-hour drive. So we just jumped in the car one Friday afternoon and took off and went up there. And my brother said, "Why don't y'all just stay a while?" So we decided to stay a while, and he called, and Monday morning we went to work for Delaware Light and Power. So I went back and got Francis, and we got married and went back up there. So July of that year, and my dad called and says, "You got a letter here. This outfit wants you to go to work for them." That's what it says. So we went back, and I got drafted, and spent a pretty good bit of time with a lot of you guys in here. You need to get your story straight, Bob. You wasn't the first one. I contacted Lynn, about 4 or 5 years before that, didn't I, Lynn? You remember?
Yep.
I sure did. I started hunting people, and that's all right. I started trying to contact people, and somehow or another I found Lynn on the internet and called and talked to him, and just I was hunting people. Just wanted to get together with guys that I was in Vietnam with, and finally it happened, and here we are. I retired out of the military. I spent 20 years in the National Guard. I got in as an E5, what it was in the military, and I broke a record. I still hold a record of spending 20 years in the National Guard as an E5 and never got another rank. The guy was in charge of the unit. It's called AST. Don't know what that stands for, but that was his job. And I went in there with them and said, can't remember his name now. I said, "Look, man, I've been in here almost 20 years and I hadn't got a rank here." He says, "Well, you got to choose if you want to get another rank or if you want to play golf." Because 14 days we went to some camp, I played golf. So, you know which one I chose. I was still an E5.
Hi, my name is Jerry DeSato, and I'd like you to introduce my wife, Carolyn. And And I don't know how many years we've been there. 40, oh, 44? So, 44. Anyway, I was born in Nebraska. I was raised on a small farm in Nebraska. And one of the 5 other siblings. I was drafted in 1968, and I went to Fort Lewis for basic training, and I ended up in Fort Sill. I trained to be an artillery, shoot the big guns. However, when I arrived in Vietnam with the Americal Division, I don't know exactly how it all worked, but I ended up not going to the battery, but going to the field with Delta Company as a RTO for the FO, Forward Observer. And that was kind of my job. We went through 2 lieutenants, and finally they just give the job to me. So I was the FO for Delta Company until around, oh, and Gary.
No, you were the man.
Okay. So I'm an artillery MOS, and the only thing I don't like about it is that I don't qualify for a CIB. And because I know that's the one that I'd always like to have, but being that MOS, you don't get to. So anyway, after Vietnam, I returned and moved to Montana. Met my wife shortly before that, and we moved to Montana, and I started a small sewing and vacuum business, which I've run for nearly 45 years. And about last year, I turned the business over to my son, and he's doing well. And so retirement is pretty nice. So I'm a full-time, my main job now is my granddaughters. Amen. Yeah, that's it. And you know, when you first are married and you have kids and you're busy trying to make a living, and your kid comes up and they want you, hey Dad, I'm going to show you something. Can't you see I'm busy? You know, I just regret those moments. My granddaughters, it's totally different. They've got 100% of grandpa's attention. 100% of the time. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. God bless all you people here. My name is Denny Bush. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Family of 6. Family of 6. I had 6 brothers and 2 boys.
It was the bottom of 8.
Oh, it's bottom 8. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Where does 2 brothers or sisters go?
I'm sorry. Okay, so then I went to parochial school. I was an altar boy, never touched by a priest though. Then the riots were starting in Detroit, Michigan. So I figured, oh, I don't want to do this, I might get killed here. So I went in the army. Stupid me. So then I went in the army. I went to Fort Lynn, Missouri at basic. Then, during basic, after done, they give you all the, infantry, cooks, or whatever your assignment. Well, they said infantry. And I said, no, I want to be a cook. Oh no, you have to be infantry. I want to be a cook. I said, I can cook. I said, no, you're going to be infantry. So I went to infantry. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. After Fort Benning, Georgia, I got to go to University of South Vietnam. So I finally graduated, and I got a lovely wife, Patricia, my second wife. She helps me every year, and I appreciate that. And I got 6 kids and 8 grandkids?
11.
Oh, let me tell you. And I love them all. And I love everybody here. And I said, thank you all for being here. Really, especially the new guys. Welcome. Welcome home, everybody. Thank you.
Paul and Mr. Mosley said we've been hunting for people, right? And right away we found one of our company commanders, Dale, help me, Dale Colley. And every year I call Dale Colley. Every year I call Dale Colley. And first in the beginning, total excuses. I had to clean that one up. You know, he's too busy. And finally he broke down and told me, he first off, he lost his leg in Vietnam, or his foot. And he's the first amputee to be allowed to stay on active duty. So he's taken that and he's made himself a motivational speaker business. And so he travels around the United States telling his story about Vietnam and all that stuff. But when it comes down to meeting with you, he says, I cannot face the people that I work with. And so I thought, man, we'll never get a company commander. And I've always had a roster. From 1971, company commander was Jack Boyd, and listed every single person, listed the artillery people attached, listed the medics that was attached, and that was like one of our first starts looking for everybody. And this last year, you don't have to leave, Jack.
I'm listening.
You're listening? Okay, cool. So anyway, this last year, I found him. Our company commander from 1971, a West Point graduate. I taught 2 inter semesters at West Point and appreciate that program, although I was OCS. And he went on to Harvard, and he's I love his outfit. If you Google on the address he gives you, it's out in some bay in a yacht. And so he's got to explain that to me at some point. Because I said, that's the kind of address I want to have. So may I introduce Captain Jack Boyd.
Thank you very much, Lynn. It's nice to meet you guys, first of all, and ladies. My wife's not here. I've been married 47 years, so the word gets back. Just make sure I get it. And I apologize. I got in last night late. I've really got a story. Lynn's been asking me for a while to come back, and I've been a Boy Scout leader in the local community for 25 years. And August and September is when we take our long hikes. We go 9 days in the Sierras. And you guys look like a great bunch of people, but hanging out with you all or going hiking in the Sierras for 9 days is, the 9 days always kind of won out. But anyway, I apologize. I grew up in the military. My dad was a 30-year career officer. I went to 10 schools in 13 years, including 4 high schools in 4 years, 2 of which were in Tehran, Iran. So it came time what are you going to do in your life? We had a great life, and so I applied to the military academy. I didn't even get in the first year. I enlisted, and I got in the next year. And when we got in, which is summer of 1963, they were saying, you guys, there's this place called Vietnam, and just remember, because you may have to go there someday. And by the time I graduated, they were saying, well, you're going to need to know this on your second tour to Vietnam. So the history is that I went to 82nd Airborne. First trip to Vietnam was the first CAV, 68, 69, kind of a messy time. Platoon leader, reconnaissance platoon leader, and so forth and so on. Went to Germany. Was dating my now wife there. She actually worked for an airline, and so she was very junior, and she flew every weekend to Germany. And because none of the senior girls wanted to leave on the weekend, they wanted to party in New York City. So my wife came over. That story has a purpose here in a second. We were thinking about getting married, and I got emergency orders to go back to Vietnam in July, August of 1970. And I was assigned to the Vietnamese Ranger Battalion down in 3 Corps because Creighton Abrams had just thrown Special Forces out of Vietnam for being corrupt, and that's a long, involved story, but he was correct, they were, and it was kind of an interesting 6 months down on the Cambodian border with 350 Vietnamese Monyards and Noms and so forth. So when I came up and got reassigned to the Delta Company 1st to 6th, and later in 71, I said, well, it's kind of fun to hang out with you guys. Before I leave that story, one of the memorable times at Khartoum, this place I was we got intelligence that there was a North Vietnamese radio signal they picked up they wanted to warn us about. I said, okay, this is one of these little special forces camps near the border. I said, where's it coming from? Because we were 2 kilometers from the Cambodian border in 2 directions. They said it's coming from within your camp. Wow. I never did figure out the answer to that. Anyway, came up, took over the 1st, the 6th, Delta 1st to 6th, I think in early March. My first memory of, and I don't know if anybody was here at the same time, I was there. We were assigned to guard an engineer battalion who's going to build a road from one of the highways out to Stinson Air Base that we were going to make. And it was the worst possible job they could give an infantry company because we were just sitting ducks. We lost a bunch of guys along that road, and at the first night I took over, we lost a young lieutenant just walking by a village. He got shot right down here. And it was kind of a messy time, but later, and this is one I make, is we were back in, Nixon had decided they were going to Vietnamize the war. So my second time with, 4 months of my 6 months there, we were out and we were combat assaulted in Laos. And we were supposed to take care of that while the Vietnamese Arbans took care of the local stuff. And to get to my point, we got combat assaulted out to near Laos. Ran in, and we were doing platoon-sized units, and I was with one of the platoons. And we landed, and you know, all hell breaks loose when you're shooting artillery and all that stuff's going in. We ran in the woods, big, tall banyan trees. Got quiet, sent patrol out in all directions, making sure we're by ourselves. We had just gotten mail on the airstrip. So the guys are out checking things out. I reach in the back of my pack, and I pull out a Playboy that my girlfriend, now wife, had sent me, and I'm sitting on this rock, you know, reading Playboy. And all of a sudden, a guy comes walking right by me, and I hear this message, okay, things are okay, and this huge explosion. And everybody hits the ground, like, oh my God, with a grenade, somebody throwing something, this guy's screaming over here. When it all settled down, it turned out the guy walking by me was a machine gunner. And he had tripped, shot the rock I was sitting on, and I got sprayed on the back of my leg and my hand. And it was all settled down. The only thing that happened was I was the guy that was bleeding. I couldn't stop the bleeding. I had to medevac myself. And the reason to tell this story is, went back went to like a MASH unit, just a disaster. And they just stitched me up and said, you have to be here a couple, 3 weeks. I said, no, I'm going to go back and do this and that. It's okay, we'll show you how to take your stitches out. And I'm sitting here I guess we didn't have a company, we had a tent or something, and I was sitting there signing papers, and I looked at this one, and I said, I said, what's this? He said, well, that's your Purple Heart. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you got shot, you got a Purple Heart. I said, you're crazy. He said, no. So I tore it up and threw it away. And the guy said, well, you out of your mind? Can you imagine? And the guys would look at you and say, you got a Purple Heart. I mean, some of you guys got real ones. I said, let me tell you this story. In 20 years from now, I'm going to be going to, or 40 or 50, going to Kansas City or someplace, and some guy looked up there and said, hey, you got a Purple Heart. I said, yeah. I was sitting on a rock reading a Playboy and got shot by my own guy. I'm here to tell you I don't have a Purple Heart. But there's a purpose to that story. About 20 years ago, somebody chased me down and said, weren't you Delta Company, this, that, and so forth? And I said, yeah. He said, I was a machine gunner. I said, you the one that shot me? He said, no, but I know who did. So my primary reason here today is I want to know who the machine gunner is. Anyway, it was a good time. Came back, I was going to spend 100 years in the Army. Things were winding down. I ended up getting out of school and went back, spent another year in advanced infantry course, and applying to graduate school. When I looked for a job, they said, as an infantry company commander, you're qualified to be either a bank guard or a ditch digger. None one of those paid too well. So I went and got graduate school and came out the West Coast and worked for some real estate companies, and then decided that my time was too important to have somebody else schedule, so I've been working myself for 35, 40 years. South of Los Angeles, in my office in San Pedro, the address, we live nearby in Palos Verdes. And the reason the address says birth 31 is it just sounds kind of fancy. But we're on the birth and the boat is, when you're bored and you're working for yourself, I married into a sailing family, so 30-some years ago I bought an old wooden motor yacht. And we chartered out as a commercial vessel. And so if you all want to come out and take a ride on our vessel sometime, we'll be delighted to have a host reunion in Southern California. In fact, we had the guys from 5th and 7th Cab were out there 2 years ago, every January we kind of take a look too. But anyway, I haven't met you all yet. I got here late last night. Sorry I'm late. Enjoyed, thanks for chasing me down, Lynn. I look forward to seeing you guys again here this afternoon. Thanks. So here's the original battery bag. We all kept a little unit, we kept our notes on, and all the guys that got wounded and all the guys that got that, and all my notes and that list is still inside the battery bag here in case you need to refer to it.
Hi, Sam Maggio. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to meet all the new guys. I do believe that I was the first one to contact Lynn and the VBA in the back there, reunions. I've been waiting for, D Company reunion for already, 20-something years. I've been to 2 C companies, and they're not much fun, they just sit around and, and they were kind of cliquey, because I got there as a replacement and they never did like me. I didn't get to go see Bob Hope. I had to stay at the base and, guard nothing, because even the gooks were at Bob Hope. So after I got out of the Army, I went to IIT free for 4 years. I got a worthless degree, and didn't help me. I did photography, and by then everybody was going digital, so it didn't work out. But I did meet Mary mid-70s, and she convinced me finally that I couldn't live without her in 78, and we've been married over 40 years now. We got my daughter Anna. I think some of you met her. She's my princess. She just turned 35 the other day. We have a son who's an electrical engineer. He's about 32, and he's doing quite well. He we bought him a condo because I got tired of him living with us. And he sort of paid us back, and then he bought a townhome, which he lives in now, and he's doing pretty good, So anyway, this year, last year actually, my wife retired as a nurse after 38 years or something of being in the oncology, the cancer ward at Loyola, and she went out top of the hill, Ma. She was Nurse of the Year at Loyola for 1 year. It was a wonderful ceremony, it was great. So anyway, one of the things that since she retired, we're going to travel. So we both bought used cars this year, and we got 2 Buicks, and I liked her, so I got a Buick SUV. So we stuck them in a garage, and we're hoping they're going to mate. And we can get a litter, maybe 8 or 10 baby Buicks. We'll see what happens. And anyway, I look forward to this all year, because, you know, it you know, kind of revitalizes me. And, you know, the rest of the people, they don't know I'm a vet when I'm at home. And this is the only time I can get with the, you know, the brothers. You guys would have dragged me off the field in case I got hurt. You know, and I know you got my back. So I'm really happy to meet the new guys. And Lauren came in, and he was like the other half of a fortune cookie for me. I mean, he remembers like half of the stuff that I saw. And we talk quite a bit. And, you know, he's an old guy. And so is Jerry Wayne. He got there, I think, in August. So as soon as I got in contact with Lynn, I had lunch with Brian Epper. The next day I called Butch Sunley, who was at Larry Stovall's house, and then they called, next day they called Larry Boatright. So we had 5 old guys that Lynn never heard of, but we were in D company, so we qualified. You know, we've been trying to make this every year. And you know, I really enjoy it. You know, I look forward, and I'm so happy to see all you guys. You know, I never knew you guys before. You know, we've been doing this since 2011, and I made 6 of these now. And I'm real happy to be here. You know, I probably had a lot of other cornball jokes, and I'm gonna skip them because we gotta get going. And there's other people who want to talk, but I just want to say this is the greatest reunion, and we owe Lynn for doing this, and whoever, you know, Pearl and Gary and whoever sets this up, because I've never been good at admin. You know, I'm the kind of guy I like to show up when the food's hot, and you know, I also want to thank our wives for putting up with us, because you know, if somebody would call up Vegas and ask what's the odds that you're going to be happy marrying a Vietnam veteran, I bet you know, it would be low. Anyway, I think all of us have been married for a long time, and that's probably why we're all still here. You know, we're healthy because, you know, we got good representation in our corner, you know. All right, I want to thank you guys, and I'll, you know, I forgot about whatever else I was going to talk about, but I also want to thank you for putting this thing together for Hannah, and, you know, maybe we can freeze some of the cake and take it home, but how we're going to do that? That was the best cake I've, you know, ever seen. You know, it's just wonderful. I want to thank you all, and whoever's next.
Well, hello, I'm Charles Dupuy from Houston, Texas. My dad was on a seismograph crew for an oil company, and we moved more than the military. I moved over 20 times before I graduated from high school. So we traveled all over, mostly in Texas, Louisiana, Gulf Coast. And I was kicked out of UT for the second time in about '69 and decided to volunteer for the draft. Came to Vietnam, went to Delta Company. The day they went and changed IOs from the Rocket Pocket to the battalion, that was my first day in the field, and their first day in that AO. So I got shot at on my first day, and I thought that was going to be a normal occurrence and wanted out of there. After a while, I became an RTO for the platoon, somehow, don't remember how. Then became a company RTO, and somehow down the line, after about 8 months, that led to brigade RTO. And I was back in Chuai then, realized that this was safe now compared to the field, so I extended to get an early out to go back to school. The day after I left Vietnam, I was out of the Army. Went back to school, got a degree, got an MBA,
became a computer programmer, did that for 40-something years. And just retired in January, and proud of that. And this is my 4th reunion. They've all been great, and couldn't ask for a greater bunch of people to really hang around with, I tell you. So thank you all. Thank you for putting it together.
My name is Lonnie White, and this is my lovely wife, Elena. We've been married 50 years this year. And we have 3 daughters and 9 grandchildren, and she's still the love of my life. And she stuck, we were married 2 weeks before I left for Vietnam. And she wrote to me every day. And I wrote to her about every day that I could too. And she was really special because she used to put together care packages for me. And she'd send me canned salmon and canned crab meat and, you know, all dry foods that, you know, I could add to my sea rations. And it was all really appreciated for what she did, and all the women that backed us when we were over there. That was really a special thing. I'm a little nervous. When I get a little nervous, my Eastern accent comes out of me. And I'm originally from close to Boston, and I migrated to Fairbanks, Alaska to go to school at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, and that's where I was going to school when I got my draft notice. They said I wasn't in earnest pursuit of my degree because I had 2 years in an ag school when I was in forestry, and I changed my major. So I got drafted and went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and then on to Fort Polk, Louisiana, so I knew where I was heading. When I got to Fort Polk, Louisiana, I looked around at all the guys, and none of us had glasses on. And I thought there was some kind of biological selectivity going on there. And anyways, after Fort Polk, Louisiana, I went to New England for Christmas vacation, and my girl who I was interested in came and joined me in New England, and we got engaged at that point. And I left for Fort Lewis, Washington, and then the Tet Offensive happened while I was in Washington. And so I told Elena, I said, looks like we're going to be here for a little while getting reorganized. Why don't you come and join me? And she and I got married at that point. And that was 2 weeks later after that. We didn't leave. We flew from Fort Lewis, Washington into Vietnam. I was a machine gunner when I was over there. And I had nothing to do with this guy that had trouble with a machine gunner. It wasn't me. I was there earlier, so it wasn't me.
How many guys didn't have you do that?
I was with Larry Stovall, and the reason why I ended up coming here this year, this is the first time I had no idea you guys were having reunions, but you guys ran an article in the AmeriCal division, a little article that said, you know, we're having a reunion, and I got a hold of you folks and got back to me, and I actually ran through some of these tapes I got on your website, and so I got to see some of you guys. You didn't look like the same guys. After 50 years, we all look a little different, don't we? Anyways, I was a machine gunner and I was never hit. I was never hit. I had guys all around me got hit, but I never was hit. I don't know, I'm a tall guy, but I could get pretty low to the ground, you know, when you needed to, so I kept out of it. And there's a motto, or I'm not sure if you call this, the unity is strength. And I shared this story with Larry. One time when we walked off after the battle of 352, our platoon was at half strength, and we walked all the way back to LZ Center. And when we were up on the hill there was no extra water to share. It's just the water we could get to drink. And none of us we were filthy when we got back there. And the first bunker we went by, I saw that somebody had a homemade can with a water can and a little shower thing attached to it. And Well, I stopped right there and I grabbed all this stuff, tried to put it together. Of course, the guy in the bunker who would put that all together came running out. You can't use that. And all the guys I was with, the squad, you could just hear them, every one of them locked and loaded, you know. they had my back, either that or I stunk pretty bad. Then I got my shower and then everybody else showered behind me. And my wife wrote me letters every day when I was there, and I wrote her back, and she still got this great big stack of all these letters and all these things going through. And when I read them, the overall thing is, well, I was hungry. I was always hungry. I was always asking her to send me something more to eat. It was kind of a strange thing, but after I'd been in the field for about 10.5 months, I found out, I think I was in the rear area for Bob Hope. Bob Hope came through, and I got to see that show. That was great. And I found out that the company clerk was retiring, the mail clerk. And I applied for the job, and the sergeant in there said, no, you can't have it, you're too short. And I said, I'll extend. So I turned in my machine gun and took the mail clerk job, and I was glad to have that. But I appreciate all of the work you guys do in putting this together. It meant a lot to me, especially to share stories with the guys who I served exactly with, and we've shared some really good stories. It actually makes it all fit back together again. This is where I went on, a lot of things that happened. So I'm just glad to be here and glad to be healthy, and appreciate all of you.
Good morning.
Howdy.
My name's Russ Wright. I guess most of you know me. And, I'm familiar with about 80%, or if not 100% of you. I've been coming to the reunions for, I think I've missed 3 of them. The ones that are farther away from Idaho, I haven't been able to make. I've been lucky to have my wife and kids come with me, and most of you have met them. I was drafted in April of '69, and I went to basic training in AIT at Fort Ord, California. Went to Vietnam and went to Delta Company, and I had one job there, and I spent my whole time with all of you guys, and that were in the. I see most of my squad still here, the ones that survived. And, we had pretty good, I think. We had, everyone was friendly. You know, we didn't have any conflicts amongst ourselves, and that was a pleasure, because I know you can have a lot of conflict when you're with strangers you don't know. A lot of personality problems. I walked point for my first 3 months in Vietnam, and then our medic went home. He did his time, and so they asked if we had anyone that wanted to volunteer to be a medic. They send you to the rear and train you for 3 days, and I said, where do you get to walk? And they said, anywhere you want to. And I said, take me, I'm your man. So that's what I did for my next 6 months there, and I got to know everyone pretty well. I can remember, while at this reunion, we've discussed some of the good times we've had, and then my memory, I try not to remember the bad things. I try to remember the good times more than anything. And anyway, I made it home, and since I made it home, I've been just trying to live my life, and I haven't done anything really special with it, other than I raised a beautiful family and a couple of good kids, and I've been successful in my own mind anyway. You know, we've struggled, but like everyone does, but I've had a good life, and I attribute it to the life that I had before. You know, while I was in Vietnam, I was trained properly, and and I was successful. I lived through it, and most of my friends don't understand. You know, the people that I know now, they have no idea what we went through, and because I'm associated with veterans right now in the American Legion, and most of them were that I'm associated with now are Navy guys and Air Force, and they just have no idea. But you know, I can put up with them. They can't help who they are. You know, they just never experienced life as we have. So consider yourself lucky to have experienced that kind of a life. Maybe not to put anybody down, but I think we did a hell of a good job. Whether anyone else thinks so or not. So thank you.
Morning, everyone. I'm Bill Doyle, and I was a member of the 4th Platoon Mortar Squad. My brother Frankie and I were in the 4th Platoon, and we were very much associated with the CP, where I got to hang with Gary Salapini and John Pugh. And John Pugh was basically the reason I'm here now, because through him, he introduced me to L.T. Baker, and I got involved in meeting all you folks. And I thank John, even though he's not here, for that opportunity to bring us together, because he was a big key also. Working with Frankie and Gary was the nuts, you know, because when I first got to them, the mortar platoon was on Hill 270. And I thought, this is great, we're just going to sit around in the bunkers and take it easy, you know. And about a week later, Kevin Colley, in his divine wisdom, decided that the CP was going to travel with the field. And the 4th Platoon would provide security for the CP. So that's what we did. And fortunately, Frankie and I were both in one piece, and we survived. And it was an interesting time, little country mouse from Georgia and big city boy from Chicago. I was born and raised in Chicago and lived there for 42 years before I transferred to Denver, Colorado. But in Chicago, I got hooked up with AT&T, and I worked there for 2.5 years. And I got drafted, and I thought, well, communications, man, I'm going to be a phone man there, you know. Well, they said they took the communication guys, they put rifles in their hands. And they took the guys who knew how to cook, and they made them truck drivers. And everybody had to learn the Army way. If you knew anything before, they wanted to erase that from your mind. So, as Russell just said, having survived 12 months in Vietnam, coming out in one piece, if nothing else, you knew that you could exist in this world. You survived on your wits and maybe some good luck, but we all made it through and are here, and that's a blessing. So I'd like to extend congratulations to the guys who were here in 1968, because this is your 50th year. Think about 50 years since Vietnam. And at the museum, 100 years ago, they were fighting World War I in muddy old trenches. We advanced to muddy old race paddies. We didn't have to wear those heavy uniforms. So, in my personal life, I was married happily for 41.5 years. My wife passed in 2013. And recently I met my girl Lauren, who happened to be a telephone girl too. She worked in Chicago about the same time I did, and then transferred to Denver a couple years after I did. So we worked together. We were never ever social or anything else, because she's much younger. I'm an old man. Suddenly that don't matter anymore. So we're here, and I'm sorry she's not here to hear these stories, but she did express, you know, she was 9 years old at the time we were in service, and she knew nothing about the war. And just through our website, and through some of the stories, and she said, just sitting around and listening to these guys talk, she gets to understand. And I'm sure all of you ladies, especially the ones who were young brides when they saw their soldier boys go off to war, and the ones who came along later and put up with our dumbasses. But I always thank the women for what they've done for us guys, and I'll do that again right now. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I always
to have Mike right, but Gary, Sal, Petey, my wife Sharon, and next month we hit 50, so she's tolerated a lot of this, you know, and to expand on what Sam was saying, you know, thanks to the ladies, because if you guys weren't on board with this, we wouldn't be on board with this, so many thanks to y'all. But I was born in Washington, D.C., parents worked for the government. I was in school, and I was in school and out of school, got drafted in April, but I was back in school, so I ducked out one. Then I got drafted, and this is 68, and I got drafted in maybe August, but I was working, and I got my employer to write this bogus letter about what a critical employee I was, not the delivery driver. But it worked. And I ducked up all like, all right, I got it. And in December, here they come again. So I ended up having to go in 9th of January, 69, Fort Benning, then Fort Polk, Tigerland, lovely place. And of course, on over with you guys, I got in the country about 12th of June, 69, and then made it through the whole thing by hook or by crook, and then left a year later in June of 70. So spent about the first 2 months being a rifleman and a assistant medic, or you know, want to be medic or something when they ran out of medics. I think could be the same thing Russ went through. And then I got pulled into the CP and didn't even know what that was, and spent basically the other 10 months with that through 4 different COs. I would have gone to OCS, but I realized you only had to stay in the field 30 days if you was an officer, see. But yeah, anyway, but we live in Northern Virginia, and this basically the same place that we grew up and met each other, and we have one daughter, and I kind of wandered into by default when I got back. The economy was in a dip, so I kind of backed into the commercial construction business as an employee in the I guess you'd call it the white collar side of it, and then that was to hold me over until I could get a real job. And as the evolutionary process goes along, I'm still doing the same thing now. 50 years later, I'm still, I guess, looking for the real job. So, but it's good to see everybody, and you know, all of us that one way or another survived the ordeal, either physically or emotionally or whatever. And thanks to Lynn and Pearl for all the hard work. So, thank you.
Hello, I'm Chuck Krantz. Come from a little town up there in the tundra, Minnesota. I met my wife at, I think I was 18 years old, and we got married on the 15th of, help me? She's giving me instructions back there. We got married a year later, the 15th of February. And it will be 50 years when we get to February. So, and that, today, I got Uncle Sam's letter that I was drafted, the day we got married. And so I was home for 1 month, off to Fort Campbell for basic training, and then to Fort Polk for AIT. And I think I was home for a little leave there, like 15 days. She had our little boy, and I went to Vietnam. He was 1 month old. And like Russ, I walked point for about the first 6 months. And then when we changed AOs. I didn't last long there. Got married on the 9th of April, 1970, and came back to the States, was sent to Fort Lewis, Washington. I had 9 months left to serve, so. After that, back home, and I had been working at a steel plant before I got drafted, and I went back there, and I was there for 45 years. I retired 7 years ago. Been the best 7 years of my life.
Amen.
And I want to thank Lynn, Carl, Larry, and everybody that put this together. Well, I want to say one other thing. I did miss one.
You aren't supposed to say that.
but it wasn't my choice.
Right.
I was a biker, and the wife and I were out on a ride 2 weeks before the Vegas reunion, and big deer jumped in front of me he spoiled my plans for them. And I almost killed my wife that time. I sprained my ankle. But I'm still here.
Amen.
All you guys.
I'm Jerry Wayman, and I was a medic in Vietnam. I was in high school, and I graduated when I was 17. And a lot of my friends that were 18 were getting drafted. And I said, no, not for me. So I joined, and I was told I was going to Italy. I said, boy, this is great. I went to Italy. Well, first I went to basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. I went to airborne school after basic, because I had to wait a month before I could get into medical school. I went to Italy. I was in Italy for 9 months when I got orders for Vietnam. Going from Italy to Vietnam was a major shock. I thought I had it made. I would never see Vietnam. Well, I went to Vietnam and was assigned to headquarters company as a medic, and then attached to Delta Company. I went to 1st Platoon, but then there was short a medic in another platoon, and my boss at the aid station said, I'm moving you over to that platoon and place a new guy into 1st Platoon. I don't know what platoon I went to, but I was sent to platoon. And afterwards, I went home, went back to school, got a degree in mass communications. I went to work for a cable company, producing cable programs. And I did that for several years. I got tired of it. I went to work as an education advisor at one of the colleges, at a community college. Didn't like it. And then I became the director of financial development with the Red Cross until I retired. Oh, by the way, from Vietnam they sent me to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, to the 101st Airborne Division, which was in Vietnam. I went to the reception detachment. I stayed at Fort Campbell for 14 years. Off and on. I had to go to Germany twice and to Korea. But I always returned back to the 101st. And we went worldwide when I was with the 101st. They kept moving us. I retired in '88, then went to work. Went back to school, went to work. But that was it. I was looking, I had been looking for something with 198. I've seen Bravo Company several times in there, but that was it. And then this year I seen Delta Company. So I got a hold of Lynn. Lynn told me about it. I said, I'm coming. I've got to. So that's it. I'm here. Thank you.
I'm Larry Stovall. My wife, my bride, of 51 years, is sitting at the back table. Patty has been to each of these reunions with me, and for all of you who were with us in Washington, D.C. last year, the final night at the banquet, we celebrated our 50th anniversary with my brothers. So that was a special occasion for us. I'm really sorry that Butch had to leave. I think he's the only guy in the room older than me. He was drafted when he was almost 26 years old, so he was the old man when I got to 3rd Platoon of Delta Company. Okay, Lynn, I'm going to stay on point. I'll get back to the first. Kind of like Lonnie, I went to school for a couple of years, and I went to a land-grant college in Tennessee. And in the early 60s, at all land-grant colleges, males were required to take 2 years of ROTC. So I had 2 years of ROTC. Now I'll get back to that in a minute. After 3 years, I had laid out a semester to work to get the money to go back to school. So after 3 years, I had 5 semesters of credit. At the end of that spring semester, the draft board said, you're fine, you know, go come back in the fall. Well, I went to work on a pipeline job up in Virginia, and 2 weeks before school started, I got my draft notice. And they determined that I wasn't a full-time student because I'd been out 3 years of high school and I had 5 semesters of credit. So fine, I got my draft notice. And I said, they're not going to draft me, I'll go join. What a smart decision that was. If you got drafted, you had a 2-year obligation. If you joined, you had a 3-year obligation. Now, along with that 3 years, you got your choice of an MOS school. So off I go to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for basic combat training. And at some point, they said, we're going to take this physical for officer candidate school. So we did. And they picked the guys that passed the physical, and they took us in one day to a classroom, and they said, you guys passed the physical, we're going to give you a test for officer candidate school. So we all took the test, went on our way, and a few days later, they gathered up a few of us and took us to the day room, and they said, okay, you troops passed the physical, and you passed the written test. And the company commander came in. The only time I saw him in my 8 weeks of basic combat training, he came in, said a few words, and left. And then the first sergeant, in great detail, explained to us that officer candidate school was a completely voluntary situation. If you passed the physical and you passed the written test, the next step was to volunteer. And nobody would force you to go. It was all voluntary. The paperwork to volunteer was all filled out on the desk where we were sitting. And all it required was our signature And then the first sergeant said, there's not a one of you son of a bitches leaving this room until you sign that paper. So we all volunteered for officer candidates. I went on to Fort Knox, Kentucky for 11 Delta training, became an armored cavalry scout. And then from there, I went to Benning School for Boys at Fort Benning. So I stayed at Benning for a year as an instructor after officer candidate school, then came to Delta Company, and during my 7 months in the field, I was third platoon leader. During that time, I also had the distinction of being appointed the executive officer, except I stayed in the field with the platoon, which also allowed me, at one point, since I was the only officer in the company, to sign for the company. That was interesting later on too, without doing an inventory. But so during that time, another duty, I was company commander on 3 occasions, never officially on orders, twice because I was the only officer in the company. You had to have a company commander. And the third time, we had a lieutenant from Charlie Company come over. He'd been in the field for 7 months and thought he was going to the rear, and instead of getting a staff job, they made him Delta Company commander. Well, I met him and he said, look, it's middle of December, he said, I'm fixing to go on leave and I'll see you sometime next year. This company's yours till I get back. And he stayed gone for over 2 weeks on that trip. So from there I went to the brigade. For the last part of my tour, I was the liaison officer to the division. That was a really interesting job because I got to go, well, I went to the command general's briefing every morning, came back and briefed the brigade commander on what I thought he would like to see from that briefing. And I've told several people at one point they pulled a battalion commander out of the field and brought him in to be an assistant 3 at the division, a young lieutenant colonel by the name of Colin Powell. So his briefings were excellent, believe me. I extended for a year and stayed on active duty, and then I left active duty, went back to school, got my degree, went to work for Procter & Gamble, kind of liked that job, stayed there 36 years. But after being with them for several years, a friend of mine talked me into getting into the Army Reserve. So stayed associated with that until I retired, and that gave me a total of 31 years service in the Army. I was trying to think back about, okay, so I didn't have any association with any of the organizations until one year, I don't remember the year, but the AmeriCal Division had a reunion in Shreveport, and Patty agreed to go with me. We got down there, and I didn't know a soul. And so, you know, I was standing in line to do something. I got to talking to the guy in front of me, and he'd been in a sister battalion. And so we were talking, and he asked me what unit I was in, and I told him. And when I got to Delta Company, 1st of 6, and when I did, some big tall guy behind me tapped me on the shoulder and said, "What'd you say? What unit?" And I told him, and it was Randy Bordner. And Randy and I and the guy in front of me stayed in touch after that reunion, just by email. I mean, we stayed in touch. And Randy emailed me and he said, "Hey, there's a lieutenant over in Arkansas that was in Delta Company after you were there that you need to get to know." And he sent me Lynn's email. And that was the year prior to the first reunion. So when the reunion was being planned, and then Sam told you about the night Butch was at my house, and he called him, and that was just that's how we got hooked up to come to the reunion. So for those of you who were in Nashville, and so Patty and I have 4 children, 8 grandchildren. We still live in the general area where we both grew up. For those of you that were at the Nashville reunion, you met our youngest daughter, Natalie. She sends her love to all of you. She also sends her thank you for all of the support that the people in this room showed her when she was in that little singing contest last year. The support really was overwhelming, and it was from so many people in this room, and it meant a lot, believe me, as she was sequestered in that hotel room, doing that little contest. Which brings me to social media, and that's what a lot of that support was about. This wasn't original on my part, but I saw something last week. You know how you see things on Facebook and you share them? There was somebody put one up, it was a picture of an American flag, and it said, "I was a soldier, I am a soldier, I will always be a soldier." I shared that, and I got some interesting comments from it, and it just made me think about 31 years. I served with a lot of guys in some different kinds of units. I mean, in the reserve, I had to become a military police officer. I commanded a personnel services battalion. I did a quartermaster job. The best job I ever had was as a platoon leader in Delta Company, 1st of the 6th. And the reason it was the best job is because of the soldiers I served with, a number of who are in this room, and who were as good of men and soldiers as you will ever find anywhere, in anybody's army. And I thank you for that, and I look forward to getting together with you every year. Thanks.
Paul Hamilton from the state of Maine, far out there. Anyway, I got drafted in August 1969, and 5 months to the day after that I was in Vietnam. It took a few weeks to get to the field, and a few more weeks figuring out what that was all about and what I ought to be doing. But I had the good fortune of having a decent lieutenant who spent some time with me and tried to teach me how to run a radio and how to communicate with the rest of the outfit. He taught me a little artillery and how to use supporting arms, so that was convenient. And I had the good fortune to be surrounded with a bunch of very able and dedicated soldiers, some of whom I've kept in touch with over the years. In fact, 1993, 4 of the fellas showed up in Maine, and we had about a week-long reunion there. Grover Cash, the late Larry Shea, the late Dr. Steve Jones, and a fellow named Steve Harris from upstate New York. And they're still alive and well. Alive and kicking anyway. So I appreciate the opportunity I had to serve with a good bunch of people, and they helped us and each other get home safe and sound. All in all, I don't regret it. It was an interesting part of life. We might not want to do it again, but the first opportunity was pretty decent. That's all I have.
My name is Gary Murtha, and first thing I would like to say is I was part of the group of 4 that got left behind at the and well, I have the sign here that Gibbs gave me to hold up, And he had a lot of people stop, but nobody ever. I saw my sign, I don't know. But I did spend a lot of time on the phone that day, I'll tell you that much. And there is no communication from that front desk to this room. They don't know where this room is. When I said the Prairie Room, they said, I think you have the wrong hotel. But seriously, I was born and raised in New York. I know that's not a great thing, but I actually lived my first 5 or 6 years of life about, I would say maybe 6 or 8 blocks away from our President Donald J. Trump. I lived in Queens, right, almost in the same exact neighborhood that he lived in. He was a little older, so I didn't know him. Anyway, moved out to Long Island. It was quite a shock for our family. Long Island, where we moved from, houses that were attached to, there was space between the houses, and there actually was a turkey farm behind our house, and it took us a while to get used to that. Anyway, I grew up, went to high school with my lovely wife, Mary, who finally made it down from the room. She had stomach virus. We grew up together. There's a little difference of opinion on this story, but the first date, I believe, actually, she asked me out. Well, okay, she told one of my friends that she wanted me to ask her. So, what does that sound like? Anyway, she went away to college. I went to work for AT&T as a telephone installer, repairman. And then after that, about a year or so, Mary came home and we got married. And I guess it was 2 years. And about a month or so after that, I got my fat envelope from the government. So we were, like a couple of other guys in here, we were only married a short time when I got drafted. I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic and AIT. From there, they gave me orders. And I, again, like some of you, I thought I had made it. They gave me orders to Fort Sherman in the Canal Zone. I went down there for jungle school, to attrition, to becoming an aggressor at the school. So I was going to stay there. Mary was going to move down, and I was going to hopefully spend my 2-year career in Panama. But we got a new commander of the Southern Command, who was Special Forces, and he said, I don't need regular Army, I'm bringing in my own guys. And everyone that was there, and we had not quite finished the training. We were like about, I think maybe within a week of finishing our training. So we technically never graduated. They just stopped us right in our tracks and cut orders and to Fort Lewis, Washington, onto Cameron Bay, and well, the rest was, Chulai, Delta Company. I think that was end of June, July of 70. I went out to 1st Platoon. My very first night in the field, we got in a firefight, and I got my CIB the first day. That was great, but I, was like, is it going to be like this every day? I mean, And they said, no, there'll be days when, we can mess around. So luckily I met Jack Bombetto. He was a machine gunner, not the one that got you served.
Amazing how many machine guns you
Yeah. Anyway, Jack, I was Jack's A gunner for a while, and then just became a rifleman in the 1st platoon, more point for a while. You know, switched off with other guys, but I was one of the first ones to get on the freedom flights where we got to come home for Christmas. We actually got a 2-week leave. You had to pay your own way back and forth, but that was that December of '70, and I got to come home and surprise Mary. Actually shocked her, literally shocked her out of bed. And had to go back, of course, and that, you know, I didn't have any qualms about that. I actually wanted to get back, and was in the field until I went on R&R. And I don't know if the captain remembers, but after I came back from R&R at the end of March, it was right after Easter, I was his Jeep driver. And I'll have to say, it was...
Not the machine gunner.
No, I was Jeep driver. And other than, you know, running in and getting our laundry, I pretty much, he was in the field 99% of the time when he was with us there, so. And the times when you came in, I don't know if you remember, there wasn't a good reason why you would come back to the company. It was always something bad. Anyway, but we did get to go to the officers club once in a while. All the Jeep drivers would have LT shirts, and they'd put them on, they'd hide us all in the back of the officers club. Don't tell anybody who you really are. Little humor there, but anyway, came home, went back to work for the phone company, retired after 40 years with AT&T. I have will be married 49 years in November. And we have 3 girls, 6 grandkids. Now I play at golf, and I kind of got a lesson yesterday that maybe I didn't not quite as good as I thought I was, but I didn't have my own clubs, so I'm using that as an excuse. I had rental clubs, and they weren't so good. Anyway, I guess that's about it. And I do love you all, even though you left me at the museum. But you did, you know, you did send the bus back for us, so we appreciate it.
Good morning. I grew up in Philadelphia. Anybody ever seen the movie Rocky? That was my neighborhood. I lived under the Yale in a little section called Kensington. And wasn't up on current events. So a friend of mine said to me, he said, you know, Jim, if we get our draft pushed, we won't have to go to Vietnam. I said, really? He said, yeah. So I was talking to the guy in the corner, and the guy in the corner said, I said, okay, let's get out and get our draft pushed. Well, this was in 1969. They had that thing called the lottery in 1970. Like I said, it wasn't up on current events, and my number was 350. I'd have never gone, but I'm glad I did. Had a good time in Vietnam. Met a lot of great people. Captain Hicks, who was the company commander of Delta Company, took a liking to me. And he said, Williams, he said, I'm going to send you in to get a rear job. I said, all right, better than the job I have now. So I went to rear, I clean up. I'm about 155 pounds, a little bit lighter than I am now. And I'm in a Shamrock hooch waiting for this appointment. And this guy called Alabama, never met him. Again, he said, what do you got, a rear job? He said, I'm married and I got 2 kids. He said, why don't
they send someone like me. So I was guilt tripped. I said, go ahead, take it. So he went for the interview, acted like he was sent by Hicks. I went back out in the field. I got out in the field, Hicks says, how'd you make out? I told him the story. He said, oh, I wanted Alabama to have the job, I'd have sent him in. So I think I was in a little bit of trouble with Captain Hicks. A few months go by, another job comes up. He says, you gonna take this one? I said, you sure right I am. So I spent the rest of my time, like my liberal buddy Gary, driving around a major from S2. And it was a good experience. So, went home, finished my apprenticeship as a glazer, spent 40 years in the union, held every position from apprentice to the international president. Just had a tremendous luck streak going. Starting with my wife, Jerry, 46 years of marriage, 4 kids, 7 grandsons. My youngest is going to have another baby, another grandson, so we won't get that girl. But to talk a little bit about Washington, D.C. When I was down in Washington, D.C., I had the ability to meet with some of the senators. And if anybody remembers what happened at Walter Reed Army Hospital, when they had the mold going on there, I said, this is a great opportunity for my international union to give something back. So I met with a guy by the name of Chuck Hagel, who was a Republican senator from Nebraska, great guy. He was in the field. He was 11 Bravo. Him and his brother were in the same company in Vietnam. Super, super guy. I said, I talked to our contractors, we'll do it for nothing. We'll paint it, we'll fix all the windows from top to bottom. I said, how do we do it? He said, Jimmy, he said, you gotta go get another senator. I said, but you gotta get a Democratic senator. So I said, all right. So I get Hillary. No, she's not too popular in this room. But Hillary and Chuck Hagel, along with John McCain and Senator Kerry in Massachusetts, we put this thing together and they said we got to take it to the White House. Bush is the president, so I'm thinking, man, this thing's over. We go over to the White House with this proposal, lo and behold, they reject it. I met with the senators, McCain and Hagel. I said, tell me why. They said, Jim, the White House said you would embarrass the president by doing that. So when you think Washington screwed up, Washington is screwed up. And it's not just on one side, it's on both sides. And they kind of forgot, you know, where they all came from. I spent 20 years there. And I had a lobbyist tell me one time, we're going to go in and see Senator McCain. Now, you can't do this, you can't do that. He's a snap out. He's going to give you no time of the day and all that. We sat in the room with all these lobbyists. I mean, big money. He walked in the room, I said, welcome home. Came over, gave me a big hug, wanted to know where I was from, what I was doing. We were able to get some support for the bill we were looking for. But when I tell you, that 20 years really soured me on what's going on in Washington. Because they don't care. It's about them. It's not about us. And that's what the shame is. That's what the real shame is. They forgot. So, 5 years ago, I had the luxury of joining this group in Nashville. And I wasn't the first one to meet Lynn. Okay? 8 or 9 other people were. And after my retirement from my great union, I got a fantastic pension. And I spend all that time with my wife and my grandchildren. And I'm one lucky son of a bitch.
Amen, brother.
Good morning. I'm Ron Pike. My wife is back in our trailer at the campground. She was worn out and tired. And if you know a little bit about her, you know that 4 years ago, she died twice on me with cancer. We kept her alive and she's having health problems. And she will be here later this afternoon for the pictures. Don't worry, man. Where I was born and raised, when I got to be about 5 years old and had to go to school, my mother was in Comstock Park for school, my dad was in Kent City, and neither one wanted to go there, so they moved in the middle to Sparta. So I went to Sparta schools, and then when I was a nice young age, about 15 years old, I made a little walk 1 mile down the road, and I asked the gentleman for a job, who turned out to be my father-in-law, eventually. And my wife says, you don't know where my grandfolks live. Wrong, because I used to drive this pickup truck when they hauled grain, when they combined it. So that was our first date. Got married in the end of May. Don't ask me which day, because the end of May is not my best time of the year. It's either the 24th, 26th, or 28th. One of them 3 days I got married. The following year, I had surgery and was staying in the maternity ward because the men's wards were under construction and they had no place to put me. And then I got drafted. Then, after 2 years of marriage, after that, I got hurt in Vietnam on Memorial Day weekend. Whoopie-dooey. We've been married almost 52, well, over 52 years now, heading towards 53. Like I said, she had cancer, passed away twice. I was lucky. I worked 36 years as a truck driver. I was one before that. When I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, the sergeant called out a bunch of guys off to the side. He said, I want all smokers over here. And he looked at him. He said, you bastards will pick up butts and trash. You guys just pick up trash. He hated smokers. So I thought, oh, that ain't going to be too bad. So then he wanted truck drivers. So half a dozen of them fell over there. He said, you get the wheelbarrow, you get the wheelbarrow, you get the wheelbarrow. And he'd come up to me and he says, what do you drive? I said, tractor trailer, 40-foot, which was the biggest unit they had at the time. He says, good. You go to the motor pool tomorrow, you can check out a Jeep, you drive the captain around, or the mess truck. Now, if any of you ever been to Fort Knox, Kentucky, they got two little hills called Agony and Heartbreak that you have to walk up with full packs. I had Agony and Heartbreak both, and my feet trying to keep that truck in granny gear, picking up stragglers. I never had to walk either one. To qualify with the weapons, my weapons are behind the mess truck or behind the Jeep, locked in. I never fired a round until the day of qualifications. When the sergeant took me to the side of the field, I fired a total of maybe 20 rounds. I qualified expert on each one. He said, looked at me and he says, you know how to shoot, don't you? I said, yes, I do. He said, good, go back to your mess truck. Spent my time in Vietnam, got there right there in the middle of Tet. When Jim Lampy puts his pictures on the thing, I'm very poor on the computer. I didn't remember his name even. First man popped up on his pictures was Ben Willett. That's the bugger that gave me the radio to carry for 9 months and 9 days until I got hurt. That's what I did all the time over there in Vietnam. I would walk and point the morning I got hurt with the radio. We had a small squad out at that time. Walked all day and night. And I got tired, so I decided to get laid down, take a nap. I got hit from my shoulder all the way to my ankles, on my whole left side. Lost all the feeling in my hand. There was surgery to repair it, did not work. From the mid-calf down to my toes on my left foot. Sherman tank can run over it, I won't say a word.
unless it stays on it, and then I can't move. No feeling, I'm having balance problems now as I'm getting older. So when I get done with this next weekend, after next weekend, I gotta go to a therapist to learn how to walk. Again. But I had 36 years driving semi. I was a driver before I got drafted. I had to fight the doctor to go back and work because he said I couldn't do it. When I was home on medical leave, the railroad was on strike. And our company was based out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and we hauled cigarettes that would not quit. Then I went back down there where I was working, and it's a small cartridge company. And the boss asked me if I think I could unload a load of cigarettes for the night, because we had 20 loads coming in and only 7 drivers. So when I went down there, our road drivers would come in, they'd take the load about a mile down the road to the warehouse, and the foreman at night was Jake 13. And when I finally ended up getting a company in Fort Knox, Kentucky, his boy was in my company. His mother had a massive stroke, and I loaned him money to go back home about the second week we were in service. And Jake remembered me from, I knew Jake before. And so when I got there with the tractor, the road drivers brought the load down for me. They put it in the dock. Usually it takes 6 hours to unload a load of cigarettes. I did 4 loads in 8 hours that night. I never touched a carton of cigarettes. Or a case, I should say, not carton. Because the railroad was on strike, he had workers that weren't doing anything, so they had to unload. Jake did me a good favor that day. Got 32 hours pay that day. When I got back, after I finally got discharged from the hospital, the company doctor would not sign my work card, my DOT card. He says, you can't do it. So I had the paycheck, showed him I couldn't do it. And I threatened him. That's the only way I got my job back. Which I thought, at the time, a lot of you out there know that you got a disability, they don't want you. I ended up with 36 years with a freight company. I had different ones. I retired November 1st, 2001, right after the trade towers. The following spring, I ended up getting real sick. I ended up having 3 surgeries since then, all because of Agent Orange. It's settled in my arteries. It's plugging me up constantly. You ladies, I really feel sorry for you. I go through menopause every damn day. I get hot flashes and cold chills. Right now, I've got a cold chill going on. So I know what you're going through. I feel sorry for you. In between me having 3 of my surgeries since 2001, my wife ended up with cancer, died twice on me. I managed to keep her alive. In between me driving the truck, also, I'm on my 36th year working for an auctioneer company. Yesterday they had another sale. I missed it. First one this year. Next week, Saturday, he already told me, be back. I enjoy it. Their son, who my wife worked for when he became an auctioneer, all of a sudden he come up one day, he says, I'm going to join the Guards. I want to serve. Well, he spent his year over in Iraq, and he said, I was never so happy to come home. He was lucky, he never seen any major accident, little conflict. He had seen the results of a lot of it, but he says, and then he appreciated me and his Uncle Steve, because we both served in Vietnam, a whole lot more. And like I say, my wife will be back there this afternoon. As soon as I can find a cell phone from Lee to call my wife, because I forgot mine this morning, to wake her up if she's still asleep. And
I think I'm the last one, Lynn.
Is anybody else? Did we miss anybody?
Lynn, can I take it? Randy was here. You want me to tell you Randy's story?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Is he okay?
Randy graduated from high school in 1969, and that fall he enrolled in community college, and he was going out to school one day and he said, I don't want to do this. I think I'll go join the Army. So he turned the car around and volunteered for the draft. When he got home that night and told his mom and dad what he'd done, they were furious. And they told him to go up and tell him he changed his mind. He didn't want to go after all, but he wouldn't do it. He went to Fort Leonard Wood for basic training, then to Fort Ord, and then to Vietnam. And he carried the M79, so he wasn't the dude either, so just let you know. He was wounded on 14th of August. He spent time in Japan, and then they sent him to Fitzsimmons in Denver, and he convalesced a while there, and then they sent him down to Fort Hood. He was in the MP battalion typing at Fort Hood, and they offered him to go to West Point, and he thought, well, if I go to West Point, I'll go to school, and then I'll owe the Army some time. I'll be 28 when I get out. It's so old I won't have anything left to do. So he didn't go to West Point. There he is there. He went to college, private engineering school on the GI Bill. He finished up his engineering degree in 2.5 years, went to work. We met and we got married. We've been married 43 years in January. We have 3 daughters. We have 4 grandchildren. I will tell you this. When we went to Shreveport, to the AmeriCal reunion, all the way down there, he kept telling me, if it's a bunch of guys in ponytails and fatigue jackets, I'm leaving. And some of you could do a ponytail, I think. But we met Larry and Patty and had it, it's just history from there. But Randy and I grew up in this area. Randy went to high school here in a little town, Raytown, and they have reunions quite often for his high school class, and he doesn't go to them. He says, I don't have anything in common, but he comes here.
A little bit nervous at this point here. Were you out there June 3rd of '69 or February 14th of '69? I was in a couple friendly fire incidents, and I was at M60 Dorgan on a helicopter. You, the one with the M60 story.
In what base?
June 3rd of '69 and February 14th of.
And
Just
June
speak.
3rd, '69, I was in 3-4 and Cane Inn. And what's the other one?
Oh, it's okay. It's kind of my joke. I was in friendly fire incidents off the helicopter on those dates, and I didn't hit anybody, but it was a Troop 17 cannon. I didn't know if it was first or sixth or not. So I thought I'd be a little nervous here and head to the door if it was me. I'm here with the American Division Veterans Association, and for the last 28 years I've been trying to collect data to share with other veterans, and that's what I'm here today, this week for. I met Lynn over the phone. I haven't really met Lynn until I came here, but I had a story about Lynn I'm going to tell you. We were talking about some things, and he mentioned that his sister really didn't appreciate him too much, and she lived in Des Moines, and that's where I live. So after I talked for a little bit, he thought it was okay, and he gave me her address. So I went out and bought her a vase of flowers and brought it to her house, rang the doorbell, and handed it to her. And they've been just like this ever since, right, Lynn?
Yeah, right.
So that's great.
Who you sent to give me flowers? I love it.
I've been married 38 years to my wonderful wife, in case this gets anywhere. And this is a beautiful thing, the way you're doing this. I'd like to have a copy of this and maybe some other stuff to share with our 1st and 6th veterans. So I'm excited to work with you guys, and tonight we're going to meet with Wayne Johnson. He did a great job with stuff. I found out there's materials that we should probably be getting from the archives that he's been working on. And I'll leave it with that and let you guys get to your fun.
I'd like to say one other thing. I'd like all the ladies to stand up. All the ladies to stand up. And, y'all have stuck by, I wasn't married when I went to Vietnam. I met my wife later on and said, well, if it had not been for this lady right here, my wife for 41 years, I'd be dead. And a lot of you were married when you went. Your ladies stuck by you. If it was not for these ladies, probably half of us would not be here today. They have stood by us through thick and thin, and I think we're on my hand.
I know myself, it only took 3 wives to get one to come. Is it Pootie time? Okay, to my cat, it was Pootie. So it's lunchtime, so we're gonna bring our food back in here and our drink. And I think, just give me a minute here. We can do the rest while we're eating. All right, sound like a deal? Yeah. Okay, and then we'll be done for the day until 5:30 when it's picture time. Have we got a little bit closer area we can tell them to go to at 5:30?
Just out here.
Okay, we'll meet in the library at 5:30, but right now, because we've got to do our formal business meeting, so bring your food back here and let's do it. Okay.